let's clean some rails, shall we? Greetings audience, I'm Boomstick, and today we're going to be talking about the rail cleaner. The rail cleaner was designed by Domochevsky, also known as Genko Megaworks on Etsy. It is a 3D printed flywheel shell-fed shotgun that fires 4 full-length darts. In the links below you'll find Genko Megaworks' Etsy, where you can get the files for $20 and the pre-built rail cleaners for about $375. Now, that is not with shipping. And remember, this is coming from, if you're in the US, this is coming from out of country. So keep that in mind when ordering for those shipping costs. You can reach out to Domochevsky for hardware, which will include all the wiring, motors, wheels, depending on what you're looking for. They can range between 124 or 164, depending on whether or not you need wheels and motors and what kind of motors you're wanting. I'm running mine on Merlin motors with Delrin wheels made by Fetwurst, and I must say that this setup is really loud. I also want to add that the rail cleaner is also still in beta. I have beta version number 3. I think he is currently on Gen 4 by now, which adds some extra lights and bits, which I did not add into mine. So, extra fancy bits for lights, and I'm sure other things have changed since getting mine together, because this is a blaster that I've been slowly working on since about December of last year. So it's taken me a bit to finally get this thing together, but here we are. When it comes to the build, I will say it was a very unique experience. There's lots of things in this blaster that aren't used really by the Nerf hobby. For instance, the wire crimping that you'll have to do along with some of the other setups for the inside. It was a good learning experience, but I definitely don't recommend this for somebody who's new. Even though it's not a bad build once you have all the right tools, which is another thing. You need wire crimpers and torque bits, which I didn't have either of those, so that was fun. I also had several issues with the self-tapping screws, to where if I accidentally drilled them in a little too far, they would crack certain pieces. So my sling point up here is cracked right around where the screw goes in. So keep in mind that if you're building your own, don't drill your screws in too far, or you'll end up cracking pieces because it doesn't stop. It'll keep going. I will also mention, if you're building this yourself, to pay special attention to the wires up around the motors, making sure that those wire crimps are completely covered and not touching. I may have ruined one of my lipos because I didn't cover up the crimps, and so when they touched, it left me with a smoking lipo, so that was fun. But I'll admit, 100% my fault for not reading the instructions correctly. So also make sure you're reading the instructions, which are pretty good. I think that you should be able to work your way through the instructions just fine. I think just little things here and there need to be tweaked, that's all. But overall, I think the instructions were actually pretty good. So now let's talk about performance, shall we? In my testing, I was able to get around 50-55 feet shots, which is to be expected using Adventure Force waffle darts. In the firing demo, you probably saw some of those darts going pretty short. That usually has to do with not letting the flywheels rev up enough before firing 4 darts at a time out of it. So if you're firing them off too quick, you might get shots closer to like 30 feet. So you do have to be a little bit deliberate with making sure that the flywheels are revved up fully, which doesn't take too long with the Merlins, but you got to give it that extra second. And I was trying to minimize the amount of noise from my neighbors, since this setup is a very, very loud setup. It's probably the loudest motor setup that I have at this moment between the wheels and the motors. And I do think that 50 feet is respectable for a shotgun. Now, I don't think I'd use this for anything over 150 FPS. So those 200, 250 wars, I probably would never use this, just because I'm going to get hit way before I get close enough to hit somebody else, and I'm also not that fast to dodge darts. So for an average player, you probably wouldn't be using this much at those high FPS. Some of the things I really like about it is the mechanics inside work very well. The internals work exactly how they should. Basically, when you pull back on the rev switch in the back, it'll start revving the flywheels and rotate the cylinder. And then all you have to do is pull back on the trigger, and as you pull back, it'll fire and then release the rev trigger in the back. So that way you're all set to pull the rev trigger again, fire again. And once your shells are empty, there's a nice little switch here that you can pull back and drop out all your shells. Now you do have to rotate it some because this arm will block at least 1 or 2 shells from coming out. So after you pull that, make sure you rotate to get that last shell out. There's also a nice safety right here for when you pull back on the rev switch. In case you decide not to fire, you can simple matter of lifting up on that, which has a very neat feature of rotating the cylinder back into its original position it was before you pulled the rev switch, which is really useful when you have a cylinder because that means that the full shell is back into the ready position instead of having it rotated out, and so now you have a full cylinder on the wrong side of the rail cleaner. Now you cannot manually rotate this because of this safety, so you can't just rotate it into the exact position you want because of that safety, so keep that in mind. I do think that this would do really well in HVZ if it weren't for one thing, and that is these loud flywheels. These things are loud and everyone around you will hear it, which in my opinion is my only real complaint about the whole blaster is just how loud it is. So I know I keep mentioning it, but it's because I really don't have any other actual complaints about the blaster other than the noise, so that's why I keep bringing it up. The only other complaints I have is the grip is a little blocky, so it's not really comfortable to hold. It's a very blocky grip. It'd be nice if it was a little bit smoothed out around the edges here, just for comfort. It's not bad, but it's definitely not one of the more comfortable grips that I've held. Also, as far as the body, I would have loved to see just a little bit longer barrel because it feels heavy on the back. Where the back looks great, it feels like it's missing the front. And I don't know if that would change anything about the performance, but I would love to see this just brought out a little more to give it a more longer barrel. But that's strictly for aesthetics. So overall, if you think that you can use this at any of your events, whether it be HVZ or PvP events, I absolutely recommend getting one of these. Maybe skip on the building it yourself if you don't have time to get all the tools and time to mess around with all the internals. It's not bad, but I might recommend just buying a pre-built one. That's my opinion. Still recommend it, just maybe go with a pre-built, especially for the modders that aren't as experienced. I do love this blaster, and I will be using this out on the field. It's going to be good. Just want to take a quick second and thank my special patrons for helping to support the channel, specifically Gunner, Builder BB, and Tyler Wright. Huge thank you to them for helping support the channel, and if you'd like to support the channel as well and get your name at the end of the video or in here somewhere along with many other benefits that I have in there, definitely go check out my Patreon. Thank you all for watching. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, go ahead and give it a like, and if you want to see more from myself and others around me, absolutely hit that subscribe button and maybe even that bell. Thank you all for watching. I've been Boomstick, and I'm out.